Superman has had a lot of iconic moments over his time in DC Comics, but no moment I think is more iconic than this. And I know it sounds strange, it's just a conversation between him and his son, but it's a profound conversation. And to provide some context here, what had basically gone on is that Jon Kent had essentially killed the family cat. Not intentionally. The cat was being carried away by a hawk and his emotions got the better of him. Because his powers were developing, he fired off his heat vision at the bird and incinerated both the hawk and the cat. And so with Goldie gone, he actually kind of kept it to himself. He hid it and didn't tell anybody. And so eventually you get to this moment here, after Superman and his son have kind of helped some people with some craziness that's going on. And Jonathan had bought a Superman shirt at a secondhand store. And he had talked about how he wanted the shirt because it reflected the symbol of his dad, and that he wanted to be super, just like Superman. And what's cool here is that Superman tells him that he's not like the boy who outgrew this shirt and then donated it, that someday Jon will have to pick it up and embrace the S for himself, that it's not about powers or strength or heat vision, it's about character, that it means doing the right thing when no one else will, even when you're scared and even when you think no one is looking. Now again, on the surface, it seems fairly innocuous. It basically just kind of comes across as a life lesson to his son. But it's actually a lot bigger than that. And here's what I'm talking about. So I want to turn your attention to a story called Superman Peace on Earth. It's part of a line called World's Greatest Superheroes. It was written by Paul Dini and drawn by Alex Ross. It's a beautiful comic book. The long and short of the story is that there is a young girl who is basically starving during the holiday season. Superman realizes this. He takes her to a local mission where she can receive some food and kind of some shelter for a period of time. And then he starts looking around the world as a whole and starts asking himself, how many people are in the same situation this young girl was in, where they have no home, they're starving, and there's no one there to save them. And so Superman starts to realize that he's not really neglectful of the rest of the world. It's simply that this is an example that he can use to show that he can be a beacon of what the world can be. So he takes it upon himself to start bringing food and resources to various places around the world who otherwise don't have them. Now, initially, he approaches the government and talks about this, and people say, it cannot work, it cannot be done, there's too many moving parts. There's a lot of naysay going on here. Now, there also are people who were in support of it, but Superman chooses to go through with it anyway. And as he initially starts this, there are people that champion his cause. They almost revere him as this messiah, godlike figure. And I wouldn't say that Superman leans into the idea of godhood, like, yes, praise be unto me, but it's simply him just recognizing that there are people who are so desperate that when someone comes along and gives them resources like this, they would bend over backwards in thanks for these various resources that they're receiving. The other side of this is that there are governments out there that have such a fine level of control over their people that when Superman shows up, the government puts on this kind of smiling face, like, of course, these resources will be given out to these various citizens. Of course we will do that to ensure that those who are starving will go without one. Of course, Superman, you have our word. But he knows they're lying. He knows that some of these governments here are going to use these resources to keep their people dependent, give them just enough resources to survive, to rely on the government for those resources, but not enough to basically see what the world could be like without that government at all. He comes across warlords. He comes across all these people who are using these as a kind of blackmail against citizenry to control people. And there comes a point in the story when some unnamed country obliterates all the resources themselves. And as depressing as the ending may be, it's also kind of beautiful because Superman starts to realize that he can't make the world be better. He can't make people improve. The best he can do is be a kind of shining beacon. And he takes heart in the fact that for every dictator that would use those resources to control those people, for every warlord out there that would use resources to control people, for every unnamed country that obliterated all the resources entirely, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who praise his name, who celebrate his actions, and have learned how to give back to the world around them, even if they felt like resources were so scarce that they couldn't, that there's always something to share. So there's a beautiful morality in that. right? And so next, I want you to look at the story of All-Star Superman. And I promise this is all going to circle back to the point that I'm making here with Superman Rebirth. But with All-Star Superman, most of you guys know this is kind of the definitive Superman story, written by Grant Morrison, drawn by Frank Quitely. It's iconic, right? The story just kind of stands on its own 2 feet as one of the greatest Superman stories of all time, alongside stories like A Superman for All Seasons and Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. And so when it comes to this particular story, while there are a lot of iconic moments, Lois Lane getting Superman's powers for 24 hours, Superman dying, different things like that, that there comes a point in the story, in this kind of final battle, this climactic battle between Superman and Lex Luthor. And Lex Luthor has developed the ability to copy Superman's powers. So for 24 hours, he's equal to the Man of Steel. And because Superman is dying, it's the perfect opportunity for Lex to kill him, to finally rid the world of Superman. But because all these powers are impacting Lex in a way that he couldn't quite predict, he starts to see the world the way Superman does. And while we don't necessarily get this great big huge long diatribe from Lex, right, a 3-page exposition of everything, all Lex really says here is that with these powers, he finally sees how everybody is connected, that it really is just us on this world, and it's everybody connected to everybody else through 6 degrees of separation. But the actions that we have here matter. Now, it's only a very fleeting thing. It doesn't last very long, but the experience brings Lex Luthor to tears, because for the first time in his life, he sees the world the way Superman does. Everyone's connected. Everybody's actions matter. Everything that everyone does impacts everybody else around them. We're not these closed off ecosystems. No one is an island. And so as beautiful as Peace on Earth is, I want to turn your attention to the other side of the coin. And there's 2 stories that I want to focus on here. Now, I promise this will all circle back to our discussion on Superman Rebirth, but the first story that I want to talk about is Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come shows the story of what happens when Superman is demoralized. The Kingdom Come is a story where Joker goes to Metropolis and massacres everybody in the Daily Planet. The Joker is put on trial, and so Superman's expectation here is that during this trial, Joker will be sentenced based on the justice system, which Superman has faith in. Instead, what ends up happening is a vigilante named Magog comes in and kills the Joker, right? Just obliterates him on the spot. And instead of the world turning against the idea of vigilantism, looking at this and saying, no, as imperfect as our justice system is, the beauty is that we can change it. We can't just take the law into our own hands. The world celebrates it. It champions the idea that a vigilante had killed a criminal, and Superman becomes demoralized throughout all of that. So much so that as vigilantism begins to become the law of the land in handling various conflicts, and these vigilantes with superpowers having no real moral guidance because Superman's not there to set an example, they kind of descend into chaos. There's all kinds of collateral damage, people are killed in the battles, and humanity starts to realize the error of its ways. There's a point in the story where Wonder Woman goes to visit Superman and says, you have to stop punishing them. You have to stop beating humanity over the head with this attitude that they got everything that they asked for and nothing that they wanted, and that he has to come back and be a superhero. Now, ultimately he does, but for that period of time, he completely and totally lost faith in humanity. And that brings us to the next story that I want to talk about as this other side of the coin, Injustice Gods Among Us. Because if Superman Peace on Earth shows Superman's role in relation to humanity, and Kingdom Come shows him demoralized, Injustice shows what happens when he becomes a villain. And this is going to require a little bit of setup, so bear with me here. But the idea behind Injustice Gods Among Us is that Lois Lane's kidnapped by the Joker. Now, of course, Superman's immediate response is that because she's pregnant with their unborn child, Lois Lane needs to be found, right? That's like the first and foremost thing. But Batman, ever the detective, and knowing Joker the way he does, believes there's got to be something much bigger than this, than just kidnapping Lois Lane. The Joker doesn't do anything that indiscriminate or arbitrary. There's a bigger plan afoot. And so as Batman starts to investigate the Joker's actions, kind of retracing the Joker's steps, he starts to realize that number one, the Joker has fear toxin. Number two, green kryptonite's been stolen along with a nuclear warhead. And number three, there has to be some kind of activation process for this nuclear warhead. And so eventually Superman's hunt leads him to a submarine where Lois Lane is being held. This leads to him grabbing the submarine, taking it out of the water, throwing it on the beach, smashing down the front door, and the first thing he sees is Joker, Harley, and Doomsday. And so he immediately freaks out, grabs Doomsday, and flies him into space, knowing the threat that Doomsday poses, that if Doomsday is unleashed, he'll wreak havoc across the city and the world, possibly even killing Superman. But throughout all of this, Batman starts to put the pieces together, and that's when he tells Superman, as he's flying Doomsday into space, that it's not Doomsday, it's Lois. That Superman has unintentionally killed his wife and unborn child. And this was all part of the Joker's scheme, that the Joker had taken the fear toxin of the Scarecrow and laced it with green kryptonite so it would impact Superman, which is why Superman saw Doomsday, because it's the one thing he fears the most. The nuclear warhead Joker stole, that was in Metropolis. The detonator was Lois's heartbeat. So in the span of 30 seconds, everything Superman knew and loved disappeared like that. And there was no recovering from it. There was no coming back from it. That Superman had basically crossed the line morally that he could not return from. He was a broken man, so much so that he goes racing back to the city of Gotham. The Green Lantern tries to stop him. Green Lantern's powerless to stop him. Superman busts into the interrogation room where Batman's trying to understand why the Joker did what he did. And without saying a word, Superman walks over to the Joker and kills him on the spot. And then he immediately addresses the world and says, I have lost everything that I knew and loved. And effectively says, the Joker is a symptom, and he's a symptom of you. If humanity was capable of getting it together, you would have gotten it together by now. And the fact that you haven't shows that you won't. So if you won't, I will make you. He becomes a dictator. He literally becomes a totalitarian ruler of Earth. And the rest of the story just kind of falls rank in line with a civil war between the forces of Batman and the forces of Superman. And Superman gets incredibly dark. He kills various superheroes, including Green Arrow Oliver Queen. He becomes a member of the Sinestro Corps, one of the Lantern Corps that's predicated on fear, instilling fear in people and feeding off of that. He wipes out this whole group of criminals who are masquerading as the Jokers, is what they call themselves, the Joker gang. He considers it an affront to everything that happened to him, and without any kind of a trial, incinerates them all on the spot. He becomes a very, very dark person. And that leads me back to this discussion in Superman Rebirth, that Superman doesn't really know any of this stuff that's going on out there. He doesn't know about injustice. He doesn't know about Kingdom Come. He doesn't know about peace on Earth, at least not at this point in his history. But we as the fans do. And so looking at this particular conversation, it is much deeper than what he's telling Jon, that it's not about our powers, it's not about strength or heat vision, it's about character, it's about doing the right thing all the time. It's a cautionary tale, because what he's telling his son here is that over the course of your life, you are going to have peaks and valleys, and given the power that we have and the place that we hold in the world, that those peaks are going to be much higher than they really would. You're going to experience some of the greatest moments you could ever possibly imagine, things that human beings could only ever dream of, but you're going to experience some incredibly low valleys, nightmares that human beings would avoid at any opportunity. But you are going to lose things as you get older. Your moral compass is going to be tested. You are going to be pushed to your limits. And that is why things like this, defining your character, is so important. Small moments here, small moments there, a good gesture here, being honest there. These things matter, because when those times come, when you are pushed to your moral limits, when those times come that you want to be a bad guy, that you want to just bend to your darker instincts and make the world do what you want it to do, you know you can't, because you know it's the wrong thing to do. So with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. I just kind of wanted to throw this out there, right? I thought it was just a very, very poignant thing given the current Superman movie that's coming out. And I've always loved this moment in the comics. I've always loved this moment because it's just so significant. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.